Hello everyone, welcome to Crypto Basics Coach podcast. I'm Marco. I'm here to help people navigate this topic so as to benefit from the opportunity this new technology provides and not get distracted or put off from the nonsense there is out there about crypto. Anything and everything presented and discussed, whether here or in our sessions, is of an educational nature and should never be taken as financial advice. Always do your due diligence and consult professionals before making any final decisions. Hi everyone, hope you've been well. No, you're not going mad. I didn't do an episode last week. Got distracted, got busy, had some family events, some birthdays, living life, and so no, you're not going mad. This is the next one in the series. So what I wanted to cover today is pretty important. It's obviously about learning. It's about a book that I read quite a while ago. I recommend it as the first book that anyone should start reading when they're starting to look at understanding finance industries, finances, money, personal wealth, etc. And that's the book from Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a good book, excellent in explaining principles, especially if you've got partner, kids. One of the best things that it does is it gets everyone on the same page in terms of common language, common perspectives towards money and wealth. It goes through, it's not a very large book, but I use it as a basis to, my kids have read it, family friends have read it. It's a good book because then when you're having conversations, you can be using the languaging in the book, the examples in the book, and everybody understands what it is you're talking about. So it's a great fundamental book. You can get it on Audible, you can get it in hard copy. I'd suggest you get it in hard copy so that you can then highlight, write all over it, ask questions, tag pages, whatever. But I'd suggest you do it that way. And there's a very important section that I find anyway, and it's called the Cshflow Quadrant. And I've used this particular example with different friends, clients, in getting them to understand what's currently going on with their finances and the position that they're wanting to get to. In some instances, I have been able to sit down with some people and confirm that they're already following it, and it's a matter of, turbocharging the activity. Now, I know this is going to be difficult because this is audio, but if you're, following along, listening to this in the car or on a train or whatever it is, try and get an image in your head of what it is I'm discussing. But at the end of the day, go get the book and this will be explained. But if on a clean sheet of paper, you were to essentially cut that up into 4 sections, okay? In your top left, you've got your liabilities. And on the right-hand side, you've got assets at the top. On the 2 below, on the left-hand side, you've got expenses. On the right-hand side, you've got revenue or cash flow. Okay. And the first thing that's very interesting about this example is what do you put in your liabilities column and what do you put in your assets column? Because a lot of people are confused and have been misguided or misled by when you go and apply for a loan. When you apply for a loan, whether it's a bank, financial institutions, whatever it is, or even personal loans, what you'll find is that, you'll be putting things like your house, your cars, your furniture, all of that stuff in the asset column. Yeah. And what's interesting is that what you haven't realized is the reason you're doing that is because the lender is looking for collateral that they'll come after in case you can't pay the loan. So yes, they view those things like house, car, furniture as assets. But in this example, all of those actually go into your liability column. And the reason is very simple. In this example, the things that go into the asset column are things that create cash flow. Okay, they make you money. They create cash flow or revenue. If they're not producing cash flow or revenue, they are not an asset. Now, this is a fundamental shift in some people's attitudes immediately, because when they then look at the liability column, all the things that they thought positioned themselves well in life financially, like a house, like cars, jet skis, a boat, furniture, land, whatever the case may be, okay, all of a sudden they realize, none of these create cash flow. Correct. So they're liabilities because no doubt they're still costing you. Whether they're costing you running costs, whether they're costing you registration, they're costing you taxes on or interest on your home loan, for example. These are all things that are essentially sapping your wealth. They're sapping your cash flow. They're not creating cash flow. So list all of those things in there and then just pause and look at that top left column. And you may realize, oh wow, I'm very liability heavy here. Then what do? Look at your asset column. Now write down things like, well, if you have a job, then okay, you're an asset, you're producing a cash flow. Your partner, same thing, put them there. Any other cash flow you may have some shares that generate dividends. That's cash flow, so put them in those. Okay. Your house, the one you live in, that doesn't belong there because you can't claim tax on it and it's costing you money if you're servicing debt. So that belongs in the debt, in the liabilities column. So in the right-hand column, yes, if you had rental houses, sure. Now, I would be even more stringent though. If you're negatively gearing a rental property, for those that don't know what that means, it means essentially, let's say you had $10,000 worth of expenses on that home with regards to interest, maintenance, etc., but you're only pulling in $9,000 from the rent, you're negatively gearing that property, meaning you're having to put your hand in your pocket to make up that $1,000 difference. If your rental property is structured that way, then I wouldn't necessarily put that house in the asset column, okay? Because it's not giving you a positive cash flow. It's that simple. So you only want the positive cash flow things in there. Again, once you've done that, pause and have a look at your situation. And you may realize that, that might explain why we can't afford the holiday we really want and some of the things we really want because, yeah, we're asset rich, but we're cash flow poor. Okay. And of course, what happens is everything from assets column on the right-hand side, that creates cash into that bottom quadrant, the cash flow quadrant. Okay. Everything on the left-hand top that's from liabilities that creates expenses goes down to the bottom left-hand corner. And you've got your expenses. And for a lot of people, by the time they weigh up their expenses and their cash flow, they're behind. And this table explains very well what's going on. Where is your cash coming from? Where is your cash going? What you thought was a liability or an asset may actually be the opposite. Okay? And it's a phenomenal way of just getting a little bit of a 10,000-foot view of your own financial situation and explaining it very simply on a single page. Now, you may have to re-listen to this a couple of times, or if you get the book, you've got the example in the book, but I'd suggest that every single person does this. Doesn't matter if you're in high school, doesn't matter if you've just come out of high school and you're in uni, whether it's your first job, whether you're 60 years old, doesn't matter. Do this example and it will explain a lot. And the reason that I've covered it off with my own kids and so forth is to get their thinking right from day one and understanding what's a liability, what's a cash flow, and how they need to be adding to their cash flow, to their asset quadrant, so as to establish more and more cash flow. The sooner they do it, the faster that will grow. The faster that grows, the more control they have of their own finances and their own life. Okay? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a job in your 20s, knowing by 25, you actually don't need the job as far as finances go. You're doing the job because you love it. Your finances, your lifestyle is paid for by your investments and your passive income. Wouldn't that be phenomenal? So have a look at that. Do the example, sit down with your partner if you have to and draw it all up bit by bit, have good conversations. It would be quite very, 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 very valuable to where you're headed. And here's another example that I've heard recently, which I thought was really good. Most people know the game of Monopoly. That's the board game where you've got properties all distributed around the board, and essentially you go around the board and you're trying to accumulate what? You're trying to accumulate assets. And in that particular example, that game, of course, you don't have rent and so forth. You just buy it outright and you own it outright. But the point is, imagine playing that game where all you did was go around the board, totally excited that you're getting $200 every time you go past go, but you don't buy any assets. But what's happening is that every time you land on someone else's asset, you're having to pay them a fee, a rent, or whatever, and your cash flow is constantly getting depleted. I don't know of anyone that's won the Monopoly game by buying no assets and just constantly going around the board and picking up 200. Ultimately, they get caught out by landing on various boxes and having to pay out fees and fines and taxes and so forth. Okay, so think about that. Imagine going through life and not picking up any assets, and somehow you think you're going to get to retirement and you're going to be okay. All right. And one thing that we've all learned is if you rely on the government to pay you a pension or to get you out of a mess at the end, it's not going to be a fun situation. It's not an enjoyable lifestyle. There's a lot of conditions imposed on people that are getting money from the government. You don't want to be reliant on the government. You need to be self-reliant. So I hope this gives you a good idea of something that you can do, something you can learn, and some exercise. And if you do go through this example, I would love to hear back from you to see, well, what was your reaction? What did you learn? So whether it's via email, through the website, or whether it's through a chat on the various social platforms, please get back to me after you've done this. I'd love to hear what you think. But the people that I've worked with that have done this, you can see it in their eyes. They're like, oh, geez, okay, well, that makes sense. And they have a moment of realization, which is huge, because that can then help you change your habits, change your mentality moving forward. It's never too late to move forward. Okay. So last week's or 2 weeks ago's homework was to go find a source for purchasing precious metals. Hopefully you've done that. And the last 2 weeks, boy, there's been a doozy in the silver market. So go have a look and find out how you can get yourself some precious metals. Hope you've done that. This week's homework, what I want you to do is just work out, and obviously don't tell anyone, but establish 2 locations as a minimum, secure locations, where you'll store your key phrase passwords, okay, for your cold storage devices and your hot wallets. So if you haven't done it, think about it. If you've already done it, review the 2 locations, make sure that they're secure, make sure that the other thing is that somebody knows of these locations. God forbid something happens to you. Okay, there's been situations, one situation which is quite famous is one of the Rothschilds' sons. They apparently had a huge amount of crypto. And unfortunately, the person passed away in an aeroplane accident. That person didn't disclose to anybody else where he kept those passwords and passphrases, and apparently there's a small fortune that's potentially been lost because no one can access it. So even when you do go to the trouble of identifying 2 secure locations, make sure that you've got some resiliency in your plan as to, well, if something was to happen to you, does someone else know about them? Does someone else know how to use them? Okay, so go get yourself set up. It's got nothing to do with where the price is right now. No excuses. Go do what you got to do to get set up for when there is price appreciation and all of a sudden your small fortune is actually worth a large fortune, and it potentially is at risk because you haven't done your basics. Okay, your what I call your internet hygiene habits. So I hope you got something out of that. Back next week. Hope you enjoy. And again, please don't feel shy to message me in the various ways you can on how you're finding this information, whether you've got any questions on this information, or more importantly, whether you have any topics that you'd like me to cover. Otherwise, take care, guys. Keep kicking it. 2026 is going to be a great year. You all take care. Cheers. If you found this information helpful and are interested in a more hand-holding approach while navigating this complex industry, please visit cryptobasicscoach.com, that's basics with an S, and book a session. The first 30-minute session is free, and we can get to know each other, talk about what your aims are, what you're looking to do, and how I might be able to possibly help. I've helped people get started, set up exchange accounts, wallets, DeFi platforms, and general knowledge. Look forward to speaking with you. Cheers.